iconic car whose engine noise could best be described as a barrel of angry bees. Not the bears! This is everything you need to know to get up to speed on the Mazda RX-7. It would be impossible to discuss the RX-7 without talking about its engine. A Wankel rotary engine. What is a Wankel rotary engine, Pumphrey? The rotary engine works off the geometric principle of inscribed triangles inside of an... dude. The rotary engine works off the geometric principle of inscribed triangles inside of an epitrochoid figure. Enormous words to describe the slightly mesmerizing movement of a triangle trapped in a pinched oval. As the triangle piston rotates, it creates three areas inside of the compartment. The phases of combustion occur around the outside of the triangle as it spins. The rotary engine was invented by German engineer Felix Wankel when he was a f***ing teenager. He didn't get around to actually marketing the engine until after World War II while he was working for a motorcycle company named NSU, Nebraska State University. Holler! In 1959, NSU invited a group of engineers and leaders of the automotive industry from around the world to see Wankel's rotary engine. One of the men was Matsuda, head of what was then called Toyo Kogyo. Now, they made their money creating auto rickshaws and later trucks under the name Mazda Go. Matsuda loved the Wankel. He immediately licensed it from NSU and brought the prototype to Japan. He essentially bet the farm on the engine and in 1961 told his chief engineer that it needed to be reliable and production ready as soon as possible. Within the first hour of running the prototype, the motor seized. Within a few days, it had blown itself up. Yamamoto's job was going to be a lot harder than he thought. The main problem was the tips of the triangular piston. As it spun around, it left chattering wear marks on the inside of the chamber. The team called them devil's nail marks. It was only after Yamamoto had a eureka moment while writing that they solved the problem. Using graphite from the pencil leads, they created apex seals. RX-7 guys, you know that word. And they gave the rotor smooth movement around the chamber without chattering. When all was said and done, after 80 prototype cars, Mazda released the Cosmo Sport 110 in 1967. Their very first rotary sports car. The Cosmo and the rest of Mazda's rotary fleet sold really well until the gas crisis hit.
Now these are the gas prices last year. These are the gas prices this year.
In 1978, the markets had recovered enough for them to debut their new rotary sports car.
The Mazda RX-7.
The RX-7, known as the Savannah in Japan, was meant as a direct replacement for the RX-3 series. The RX-7 ended up indirectly replacing all of the other rotary cars except the Cosmo. Mazda retired everything else in 1977. It was inspired by the Lotus Elan, and the first series referred to as the SA because of the beginning of the VIN series was a light two-seat coupe. Mazda called it front midship rear drive since the Wankel 12A engine was sitting slightly behind the front axle. This gave the car a low center of gravity and good weight distribution. She's a good-looking girl, she's got good weight distribution. While the engine was definitely light, it packed quite a punch. The RX-7 could go from 0 to 60 in 9.2 seconds and ran at 100 miles an hour at 6,000 RPM. Unlike a normal reciprocating engine, the rotary needed to be driven to redline on a fairly regular basis. Mazda actually recommends running it to redline in order to both clear out the carbon deposits and to keep the oil at the right temperature and viscosity.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
And what kid from the 70s and 80s couldn't get behind a car with pop-up fucking headlights? Come to think of it, I'm still behind anything with pop-up headlights. All three series of RX-7s were released in the US with the FB name attached to the Series 2 and 3. Series 3 saw the introduction of the 1.3-liter 13V engine. The RX-7 was already becoming a darling of the club racing level. It was fast and very light, and it handled beautifully, as long as you had fuel in the tank, because if you had an empty tank, it would spin. In 1985, the year I was born, Mazda redesigned the RX-7 for my birthday, and the second generation was born. This time they took inspiration from the Porsche 944, and the FC RX-7s were closer to a touring car with sports car highlights than the first-gen pure sports car. The Series 4, produced from 1986 to 88, came standard with the 13V DEI engine, with a turbo version available with 189 horsepower. Mazda also finally got around to upgrading to rack and pinion steering, which greatly improved what could politely be called its tendency to oversteer. It also traded out the clunky drum brakes for discs, and the Series 5 inched up the horsepower to 160 and finally to 200 with the introduction of the Turbo 2, the coolest car in initial D. The FC was Motor Trend's Import Car of the Year in 1986, and the Turbo 2 earned its second placement in Car and Driver's 10 Best list as well. But even after adding a convertible top, the best RX-7 was yet to come.
Enter the FD.
In 1992, Mazda released a futuristic-looking third-gen Series 6 RX-7. Finally embracing its sports car identity, it came standard with a 13B REW sequential twin-turbo engine. The twin turbos had been designed in part by Hitachi and worked together to give smooth acceleration. The first turbo supplied extra torque at low RPMs, which had always been an issue for the rotary engine, and operated between 1,800 and 4,000 RPM. The second was set on standby until it reached 4,000, with the actual seamless changeover occurring at 4,500.
Enough! You want my head to explode?
The international community, however, was going to have to be satisfied with this last imported version. Due in part to Japanese financial crisis in the 90s, Ford took over as a controlling interest in Mazda in 1996. The Series 7 RX-7 released soon after was only available in Japan and Australia. Its final iteration, the Series 8, was released in Japan only with a myriad of upgrades. More efficient turbochargers, better intercooling and radiators, new lighting design, more comfortable seats, 17-inch wheels, and more power.
Power! Power!
But alas, they were not for us. Mazda did introduce the RX-8 in 2003, and we got it. For many Mazda fans, the heavier, less sleek, and less powerful RX-8 was no substitute for the legendary RX-7. The engine was more fuel efficient and had better emissions ratings, but at the cost of less torque, problems with failure on the apex seals, and in some cases on the first-gen cars, total engine failure. Even increased fuel efficiency couldn't save the RX-8 from the economic crash of 2008, and it was retired in 2012. While the RX-7 is no longer in production, it has left a lasting impression in the automotive world and in all of our hearts. The RX-7 was a constant presence in the 24 Hours of Le Mans endurance race, from its first missed by a second to qualify in 1979 to its eventual 1991 dominance with the iconic 787B, still one of the most beautiful cars to grace the circuit. The RX-7 dominated the IMSA GTU series for 10 solid years, from 1982 through 92, and won more IMSA races than any other model. It even made an appearance in 11th place at the World Rally Championship in 1981. Not bad for a car 3/4 the size of a Corvette with an engine prone to backfiring and burning through apex seals. Every few years, Mazda teases us with news of a new Rotary or a new RX-7, but so far they've not returned to the classic. Here's hoping that one day they'll make it efficient enough to pass new emission standards and still retain the pure fun of the old. This is everything you need to know to get up to speed on the Mazda RX-7. Please click to subscribe, comment down below. How are we doing? Do you like RX-7s? Are FDs worth the price now? What's your favorite generation of RX-7? Let us know. Whew.